Three, two, one. Hello class, this is Marcella, and today we're going to be talking about, now that we sampled our site at Lake Vandis, what do we do with the data? So we're going to be talking about not only what we do with the data, but how do we put it in a nice report, say for right now me to read, but in the future after you've graduated and gotten a job as a natural resource manager or forester, how do you put the data that you collect in a easy to read, concise report that your supervisor can read to get a better information on the stand? So let's move through that. So this lecture is going to be split up into two parts. First, we're going to talk about the technical report, and then we're actually going to look at the data or an example of the data. So, data entry, we can use, for this class, we'll talk about two formats. Excel is a great one to use. It's easy, it's pretty well available, and it's the tool that we're going to be doing our data entry and making our figures. Google Sheets is also a great tool, especially since there were multiple groups that went out and sampled on Saturday. So there are multiple people with data. So for this exercise, you will be entering your data into Google Sheets, and that link is on Moodle. So why do we sample? So there's lots of different steps in planning a silvicultural treatment or developing a silvicultural prescription. And we're going to talk through a lot of these throughout the lecture and the lab. But the one that really why we sample is to evaluate existing stand conditions. So what is in the stand right now? And that's what we did on Saturday. We collected this data, and now we have to analyze this data. We have to actually work this data up. So we're going to touch more on working this data up, but after we've worked this data up, we need to present this data. So you need to put it in a format that a supervisor or an instructor like me can easily read and pick out the key pieces. So in a technical report, what are the pieces? So there's the introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So the introduction, this is giving you a background. What is the site? Where is the site? Kind of this, why was the site planted? Why did they choose red and white pine at Lake Vandis? What do you know about the history of the site? Also, maybe what do you know a little bit about the silvics of red and white pine? So again, this is a pretty short, kind of 1 to 3 paragraphs to give a base of information before you get into details. The methods, this is the who, what, where, when. So, where did we sample? What was the site like? There are all kinds of good resources available for this. So this is stuff including maps, your soils, climate, maybe site index, the ecological classification system. So not exactly in our example since we didn't sample the understory, but this is all those important details on where. Also, how did we sample? What tools did we use? What did we sample? What kind of plots do we use? Do we use fixed or variable radius? And why? And then how did you actually analyze or work up the data? And for this example, or for this report, I do actually want the equation. So I do want the equation from going to calculate basal area for trees. So 0.5454 times dBH squared. I'm going to make sure that equation sticks with you for the rest of your life. So this is where you should put everything that you did, so who, what, where, when, how, into the methods. So what do we actually want to calculate? We might want to calculate things like average basal area per acre or average trees per acre. We might want to know about regeneration, such as seedlings per acre, and then finally a diameter distribution is always nice. So we also measured heights, and we only measured these heights on a subset of trees, right? So what should we do with them? Maybe we can create a little regression linking diameter at breast height with the actual height of the trees. So there's a great correlation between diameter, dBH, and height. And we can use that information. So those are some of the calculations you're going to be doing. Um, with that, your results, this is where you put those figures and tables. This is where the facts are. However, these facts can't stand alone. You have to give me some information. So in the results section, I'm not looking for just table after table or figure after figure. You have to have a sentence or two accompany each figure. And also, each figure and table needs to be labeled. It also needs to be formatted correctly. Please look at the technical report, technical example that is on the Moodle page to look about formatting for figures and tables. So the results are the facts. The discussion is where you actually interpret your results. So what do these mean? What else did you see that wasn't measured? Maybe invasive species. We're at a park, so maybe used by people. And then also thinking about what's the future for this stand. So where do you see this? What are the important attributes? How has this stand changed over its history?